flight. Meghan refused to touch or look after Archie even once. She didn't look at him. She had zero interest when he was upset, and she expected the staff the entire time to take care of that baby. Meghan is so desperate to be liked, but doesn't want to change anything about who she is in terms of just being authentic. And I think she has to make these little stunts to make herself seem likable. And it's just disgusting that you would even do this. And the American Airlines staff that I spoke to were absolutely insistent that Meghan Markle was the worst celebrity they had ever had to serve. They were absolutely insistent that her behavior on board flights was diva-like, rude, cold, and demanding. Air pressure wasn't the only thing dropping on that flight. So did Jaws. As Meghan Markle reportedly ignored Archie entirely. The Duchess didn't even look his way. Ouch. Meghan Markle used this hapless American Airlines hostess to put out a whole load of propaganda about what a brilliant passenger she was. This one caught even the most seasoned royal tea sippers off guard. A senior British Airways flight attendant recently dropped a jaw-dropping claim that's stirring serious turbulence in Meghan Markle's carefully curated public image. According to the crew member, during a long-haul flight to South Africa, Meghan allegedly didn't just take a break from parenting. She checked out completely. Because, let me tell you, I have been working for some time on a story that was prompted to me by a British Airways air hostess out the total opposite. She didn't touch him. She didn't even look at him. The attendant reportedly said, still sounding stunned. Even when he was upset, she showed zero interest. That's not forgetting your kid's favorite toy. That's allegedly tapping out of the entire role of being a mom for an international flight, famous for the atrocious ways that she treats crews on international flights, including, by the way, on American Air. So who took care of baby Archie during the hours in the air? Not Meghan. According to the source, the nannies and flight crew were left to play tag team, tending to the crying royal tot while Meghan kept to herself. No rocking, no soothing, not even a glance. It wasn't exactly the image of the doting hands-on mother we're used to seeing in glossy magazines and Netflix specials. We'll use ordinary people to try and wage. It's a claim that paints a stark and frankly uncomfortable picture. One where Meghan seems more concerned with reclining her seat than responding to her son's cries. And sure, everyone needs a break, especially moms. But this wasn't an exhausted mother catching her breath. This was reportedly complete disengagement, the kind where even the flight crew noticed and couldn't stop talking about it after landing. And I was approached completely out of the blue by a senior staff member on board. I'm, of course, protecting that woman's identity for obvious reasons. And she said to me, "Dan, people are wondering, is this the same woman who once tearfully told Oprah how deeply motherhood changed her? Or are we seeing cracks in the royal fairy tale that's been packaged and sold to the public?" Now, this woman first looked after Meghan Markle on board her flight to South Africa. You remember at the time that Archie was a young child, and this woman was just utterly horrified. To be fair, there could be more to the story. Jet lag, stress, security concerns. Who knows what was happening behind the scenes? But even with all the royal baggage taken into account, the idea that Meghan was allegedly so detached from her own baby during a long-haul flight is hard to ignore, and even harder to explain away. Whatever the truth may be, one thing's clear. This isn't the kind of turbulence the Sussex brand needs right now. To present herself as someone who treated staff well, when indeed Meghan's treatment of our hostesses on board flights is nothing short of abysmal. Now, some of you might, while most mothers are instinctively glued to their newborns, especially in stressful situations like an international flight, Meghan Markle allegedly took a drastically different approach, one that left even seasoned cabin crew unnerved. According to one senior flight attendant, It wasn't just that Meghan seemed tired or momentarily distracted. No, this was something deeper, something colder. Yes, of course that goes on fine. But then, do not try and present to the world that you're someone who staff members on flights. There was no connection between mother and child. The staffer said flatly, as if still trying to wrap their head around it. Not a tender glance, not a reassuring pat, not even a motherly sigh of exhaustion. Just nothing. A total emotional void, as if baby Archie was just another passenger on the manifest, not her own flesh and blood. Now, I actually do believe that the way that you treat staff on board a flight is quite indicative of your personality, because we all know these are great people and they're looking after you in difficult circumstances. And so, I want to tell you just a little bit about what I learned firstly about Meghan's behavior on Forget Mommy and Me bonding. This wasn't a mother multitasking or overwhelmed. The crew described it as deliberate, calculated, like Meghan had decided for reasons unknown to emotionally clock out and baby Archie left to the care of professionals, while his mother floated above the fray with an iced-out composure that could rival a Buckingham Palace butler to South Africa, because it is very telling. And remember, Archie, at that point, was a young child. So, this air hostess report, but the real twist in this airborne drama, her behavior apparently did a full 180, the moment Prince Harry appeared. According to the source, the very same Meghan who had been as warm as an air sickness bag suddenly lit up like she was auditioning for Most Charming Duchess 2025. Sweet, polite, gracious. She even smiled at the crew. That's right, smiled at baby. This British Airways staff member insisted to me that it was very obvious to her that there was zero connection between mother and child. There were a team of staff there, including at least one nanny, who was feeding the baby bottles. She was a completely different person when Harry was around, the crew member revealed. And the second he was out of sight, back to Frosty, like flipping a switch. 1 minute, she's a royal delight. The next, she's giving off. Don't talk to me unless you're holding a crown energy. What was so fascinating, too, is that Meghan Markle was only polite to the staff on board that flight. When Prince Harry was around, this staff man, this kind of Jekyll and Hyde routine, didn't go unnoticed by the flight staff. In fact, it raised a few eyebrows and probably some blood pressure readings, too. The crew couldn't help but wonder, was this just the stress of travel and motherhood? Or was it something more intentional? A performance for her husband's benefit, carefully timed and impeccably acted, when Harry was not in direct earshot or in the vicinity. She was like a different person. And, again, that's a small detail. But it's one that I think is very important, because it does suggest that there is some manipulation of Prince Harry that goes on, and some reason why when she's constantly reported. If true, it hints at something far more unsettling than just in-flight mood swings. We're talking manipulation, image control, and a level of emotional detachment that left even professionals who've served everyone from pop stars to politicians genuinely spooked. With size of the Atlantic as a bully, Harry is very shocked by this, because clearly Meghan does change and become a different person when he was around. Now, because when you're dealing with royals, drama is expected. But when the curtain slips, and what's behind it is this chillingly calculated, that's when people stop whispering and start talking loudly. This is not new. Meghan Markle had a reputation with airline staff for many years before she even entered the royal family. And this was because, of course, she would often crisscross from across. As unsettling as the story of Meghan Markle's alleged indifference to baby Archie may be, what's even more eyebrow-raising is this. Apparently, it wasn't some one-time fluke or the result of jet lag. According to the same British Airways crew member, Meghan has a history and not the glamorous red carpet kind. We're talking about a pattern of difficult, entitled behavior stretching back years, long before tiaras and tabloids entered the picture. And I was told that I needed to look into Meghan Markle's treatment of stuff. So I did. And the first thing I found out that was very interesting is that Meghan always used to insist that she be upgraded on flights, even though she would not purchase the high back in her suits days. When she was still Rachel Zane, and not the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan reportedly already had airline crews quietly praying her name didn't appear on the passenger list. Forget humble TV actress. She allegedly came aboard like she was flying Air Windsor, demanding VIP treatment without so much as batting a lash. To herself, and this was something that started to infuriate crew because she was just so consistently rude to them when she was on board. And so I spent a number of months attempting to contact other people within the airline industry who had experienced. One former crew member claimed that Meghan was known for pushing for complimentary upgrades, as if she were doing the airline a favor by simply existing in the economy. Excuse me, I need to be moved to first was apparently her energy, even if her ticket said 23B. And if those requests were declined, cue the icy glares and clipped responses delivered with the grace of someone who thought be humble was a suggestion for other people to these days when she's flying. But it wasn't just the upgrade hustle. Multiple insiders have recalled that her overall attitude on board was, let's just say, less than Duchess, like there were reports of condescending tones, passive-aggressive signs, and a distinct air of, you work for me, even though the only crown involved was probably printed on a Canada Dry can. When this video emerged on American Airlines flight attendant trying to flight crews who've handled rock stars, politicians and even full-blown royalty said Meghan stood out, not for her charm or poise, but for how quickly tensions seemed to rise when she didn't get her way. One former attendant summed it up bluntly. She acted like she was above everyone else before she even had a title to back it up. The only understanding is that this was an arranged PR stunt, because, again, when I'm speaking to the American Airlines staff members, they have insisted to me that it's so no. This wasn't a case of a frazzled mom having a rough day in the skies. This was allegedly a pattern, a consistent vibe, the kind that had flight crews exchanging knowing looks. The second her name showed up on the manifest to post publicly on TikTok about their experience with a famous passenger. It goes against every single contractual rule. It could act. And now that these past stories are resurfacing in light of her more recent controversies, people can't help but ask, has Meghan always been this way? Or did the royal title just give old habits a shinier stage? Either way, airline insiders seem to agree on one thing. When it came to Meghan Markle, turbulence wasn't just outside the plane. And the fact that this air hostess also publicly shared the contents of a note provided by the passenger would cross every ethical line. So the American Airlines staff that I have spoken to, just when the turbulence around Meghan's alleged behavior on that British Airways flight was picking up speed, something very curious happened. Like clockwork out of nowhere, a TikTok video surfaced, featuring an American Airlines flight attendant practically serenading Meghan Markle with compliments that would make a Hallmark card blush. Arranged setup. And my understanding is that Meghan has been trying to get ahead of the story. She wanted to use this flight attendant to try and make the point that actually she is very nice to staff on board, when actually that is not the reality. And she knows that she, in the clip, the crew member beams while describing Meghan as sweet, gracious, and beautiful. And get this, share what's supposedly a handwritten thank you note from the Duchess herself. A note as if Meghan just carries stationery in her clutch, ready to sprinkle kindness like confetti at 30,000 feet. Had on my flight, who I had a pleasure of serving. The Queen, the Princess, the Duchess of Sussex. The Meghan Markle was on my flight, and she's so beautiful in person. She was so sweet. To the casual viewer, the video seemed innocent, even heartwarming. Just a lovely celebrity encounter, right? Wrong? At least according to seasoned airline insiders who took one look and collectively said, yeah, no, far too coincidental for me. The fact that I'd been working on this story for a number of months, speaking and taking my time to speak to as many people who had served or looked after Meghan on board flights, mainly long-haul flight. For starters, American Airlines, most major carriers, has a strict no-no policy when it comes to discussing high-profile passengers publicly. You know, that whole discretion is part of the job clause. Blabbing about celebrity flyers on TikTok. That's not just frowned upon. It's the kind of thing that gets you a one-way ticket to HR. Because, you know, her whole claim thing is I'm not even speaking to my father because of, you know, taking pictures for the paps, and sharing a handwritten note. That's not just oversharing. It's practically PR treason. It's the kind of move that could trigger a memo from a corporation faster than you can say exit row. Yet this video didn't just go up, it went viral. Suspiciously viral. These pictures taken of him. Look, she does it too. Look, she does it all the time. Now, here's where things get really interesting. This TikTok love letter to Meghan just so happened to go live while a British journalist was quietly investigating those much less flattering claims about Meghan's behavior on a separate airline. A coincidence? Possibly. But to the folks who've worked in the industry and in PR, the timing felt just a little too perfect. And it comes to just being a real good person, because this proves she has to make these little stunts to be likable, because otherwise people don't like her because of what you were saying. One insider from American Airlines reportedly raised an eyebrow so high it could have hit the overhead bin. We don't just let the crew post about celebrities. They said this smelled like damage control. Very strategic damage control flights. I mean, she's just not a nice person. And Harry doesn't even apparently see it. I mean, I think it's slipped. It has shown itself sometimes. And here he just doesn't want to wake up to his reality that his wife is nothing like thee. So was this heartfelt TikTok moment a spontaneous outpouring of admiration? Or was it a glitter-coated Band-Aid designed to cover up the brewing storm of scandalous headlines? His wife is a nasty piece of work, and she has shown herself to people that know, and it makes a lot. Whatever the truth may be, the public saw two Meghan Markle, one being accused of emotional frostbite mid-flight, and another penning polite thank-you notes with princess-like charm. The contrast was so sharp it could slice through a Delta Biscoff cookie. In the world of celebrity image management, timing is everything. And this video, it didn't just smell like roses. It reeked of spin. Not a good person. She bullies people, and she's just not. By the time the TikTok tribute to Meghan Markle had racked up thousands of likes and glowing comments, seasoned royal watchers and industry insiders were already rolling their eyes so hard you could hear the collective clunk. For those who've allegedly seen Meghan's behind-the-scenes behavior up close, this sudden burst of online adoration didn't feel like a sweet coincidence. It felt like strategic spin with a dash of glitter. What kind of person doesn't even look at their child and, you know, want the staff to constantly feed them? She doesn't want anything to do with her own children. They are props in this whole PR. It was too convenient. Sniffed one source close to the British Airways investigation. I'm in the middle of speaking to multiple crew members, people with years of experience, telling me about tantrums, entitlement, and emotional ice-cold stares. Then, poof, a TikTok pops up, showing her as some airborne Cinderella, writing thank-you notes in cursive. Please, I mean, to make her look like a loving mother. She is nothing to be admired. Her true self is nasty. She's a bully, and she doesn't have a good bone in her body. And she deserves all the negative The sudden viral praise felt less like an organic moment and more like a page ripped straight from the Celebrity Crisis Management Handbook, right under the chapter titled Distract, Deflect, Dazzle. And who just happened to pick up and run with the story? None other than People magazine, a publication that's practically Meghan's PR BFF. Critics noted this was the go-to platform whenever the Duchess needed a quick image polish, a safe place where hard questions go to die and positive spin reigns supreme. It's her, because we need to hear people telling us who the real Meghan Markle is, because we see it and we just need it validated. And thank goodness people are able to validate that, the things that we know about. It wasn't the first time Meghan was accused of trying to rewrite reality with a little help from curated coverage and viral moments. This is the woman who went from primetime interview tears to podcast vulnerability, and back again, strategically dropping emotional breadcrumbs that kept public sympathy just within reach. People have said, because you can't keep going around acting and being this kind of person while trying to appear to be this really good-natured person who's trying to do good in the world. I mean, that's fraud. Okay, that is right. To skeptics, this wasn't just PR. It was a performance, one where the real Meghan allegedly pulls the strings behind the curtain, while the public gets front-row seats to a polished production titled Meghan, the Misunderstood Duchess. A very sinister, devious, not good person. It's so bad. And I think us talking about it, Dan has to continue because she will keep trying to get over on people. And while the TikTok video may have successfully painted her as the high-flying sweetheart of the skies, those who've watched her story unfold aren't so quick to buy the ticket. As one insider put it, she's not just managing her image, she's choreographing it. And when things get messy, she knows exactly when to cue the standing ovation. In other words, the Meghan the public sees may just be the edited for airplane mode version, while the unfiltered cut remains locked in the cabin crew's group chat. Her celebrity likeness, you'll keep trying to make this thing work. You know, people don't come out and say the truth about who she really is. And I'm so glad to hear that. And American Airlines should definitely do, while their uniforms may come with smiles and service standards behind the curtain. Or, in this case, the galley flight attendants have stories. And when it comes to Meghan Markle, the stories aren't exactly the fairy tale variety. This agent, because it doesn't look good for American Airlines that their flight attendant is coming out and revealing personal information on a note from a celebrity. How would that make other celebrities feel? Though bound by strict confidentiality agreements and the ever-present threat of legal smackdowns, several flight attendants, past and present, have whispered their truths under the protective cloak of anonymity. You won't see their names in glossy profiles or find them spilling the tea on Instagram Lives, but in private. Oh, they talk. And according to them, the tea is boiling. They're on a flight, you know, where they're going to be outed and talked about by name to the world on social media. It's just not a good look for American Airlines as well. Something needs to. Across multiple accounts, Meghan's name pops up like a recurring bad layover. Words like cold, rude, difficult, and entitled come up with such frequency. You'd think they were printed on her boarding pass. One veteran crew member reportedly quipped, "We've served rock stars, billionaires, even actual royalty." But Meghan, she was in a league of her own, and not in a good way. Sure, totally. I mean, it was so obviously a setup. So obviously a setup. And the thing is, I can honestly hand on heart tell you, P. Diner, that I was not pursuing this story until I was approached first by that British Airways stuff. Another added, "I've dealt with passengers who've brought live chickens on board and still had better manners." And here's the kicker. These accounts weren't just one-off anecdotes fueled by a bad mood or jet lag. Nope. The complaints echoed a disturbingly consistent pattern told by people who worked different flights, different airlines, and even different time zones. Meghan, they claim, didn't just have a bad day. She had a brand of behavior, a separate American Airlines staff member. And this was long before that video ever came out. And they were insistent to me that there is a real pattern. Of course, the crew can't go public without risking everything from job termination to a courtroom showdown. But when that many professionals whose literal job is to stay calm and composed while serving Diet Cokes at 35,000 feet are still talking about one particular celebrity years later, that's not gossip. That's legacy. If you're here, and I think P. Diner, you're so right to point out that Meghan behaves in this way when she knows that she is. Despite their professional obligation to stay tight-lipped, the repetition of similar complaints across different crews, different airlines, and different years builds something undeniable. A portrait of a woman who may wear empathy on her sleeve in public, but allegedly checked kindness into the overhead bin a long time ago. Because, for example, with all of the staff members at Buckingham Palace, they have been unable to speak out, and Kensington Palace, by the way, because of the Official Secrets Act. All of the staff at Artwell in Los Angeles unable to speak out because of the car. So, while the public Meghan might be penning thank you notes and discussing compassion on podcasts, the private Meghan, according to those who've crossed paths with her at 38,000 feet, was closer to a royal pain in the tail section. And it's the same thing when you're on board a flight, because it's your career, and because these contracts with the airlines are so watertight. It's very different than, for example, the interaction. If this whole saga were a stage play, and let's be honest, it's starting to feel like one, then Prince Harry might just be the unwitting leading man in a drama he doesn't realize he's starring in. At a restaurant. The other thing is, as well as I think Meghan can fake it for an hour, maybe even 2 hours, but multiple insiders have now pointed out what appears to be Meghan's most effective disappearing act, the vanishing of her reported cold, dismissive demeanor. The very moment her husband enters the scene, like a switch being flipped, the frosty air melts into sunshine and warm pleasantries. Suddenly, Meghan becomes the picture of grace, smiling, polite, even borderline charming. For a long period of time, either as a staff member in an office environment, or, of course, on a long-haul flight, which is stressful. People are tired. Of course they are. That's when she is unable to hide. She's sweet as pie when Harry's around. One crew member quipped, but the second he steps out of earshot, it's like someone swapped her with a new passenger at 30,000 feet. Poof! Cinderella's gone, and here comes the Ice Queen in couture. A little guy so horribly. This behavioral shape-shifting has led some close to the situation to conclude it's more than just mood swings or stress. It feels deliberate, calculated, like a well-rehearsed performance for a very specific audience, namely Prince Harry himself. I understand why it must be very galling for these crew members to then see this TikTok video go viral, and they're like, and therein lies the real heartbreak. Harry, by all accounts, seems none the wiser. Or worse, he sees it and chooses to look away, blissfully wrapped in the warm cocoon of loyalty and love. Who could blame him? This is the man who walked away from the royal family to protect Meghan from the glare of the monarchy. He's not just a husband, he's her knight in shining armor. But what if the dragon he's been fighting all this time isn't outside the castle, but sitting on the throne beside him? That's nothing like the woman that we were dealing with. Yeah, it's almost like, there's this big secret, Some insiders argue that Meghan is not simply misunderstood. She's masterfully curated. According to them, she's pulling emotional strings behind palace walls and press headlines alike, keeping her halo intact with Harry and the public, while allegedly letting the mask slip the moment the cameras and her husband aren't looking. This person and people really, like her, but the people in the airlines, they're like looking, wait a minute, that's not the truth. And so they want to get out with, the truth. To these sources, Meghan's greatest skill isn't just PR. It's an illusion, an ability to shapeshift between the relatable humanitarian and the rumored diva at will. And if that's true, then Prince Harry isn't just in the dark. He might be center stage in a carefully directed illusion where love is real, but the script? Not entirely. This? Because I think Meghan is going to be that person that, by any means necessary, she's going to try to make herself be the good guy. Like, she's going to, as one observer put it, Harry's in love with the version of Meghan she wants him to see. The question is, what happens when the curtain finally falls? Now, that's a royal plot twist. To be able to win with that, because people that come out and give the truth, that know who she really is, are going to speak up, and they're going to make it known to the whole world. And eventually, she's going to drown in the truth coming out against. At the heart of this swirling drama lies a deeper, far more uncomfortable truth, one that extends far beyond Meghan Markle. It's the growing danger of the manufactured persona, and the lengths to which modern celebrities will go to preserve the glossy, filtered image they want the world to see. Now, people are going to probably get rid of those NDAs and say what it is that their experience is, because it's going to be just too much to handle, trying to not say anything when Meghan is out there continually. If what insiders are claiming is even half true, that Meghan carefully choreographs every smile, every gracious nod, every hand-scrawled thank you note, then we're not just talking about a little brand maintenance. We're talking about full-blown narrative engineering, a real-life Truman Show. Except this time, the cameras are in the palms of influencers, media handlers, and loyal publications. Happy to sell the fairy tale for clicks and clout. Good person, and she's trying to help people and, do all these philanthropic things. This woman it's almost like we have to have it exposed continually because she's going to keep trying. This is like playing that game, whack-a-mole, we're going to keep trying. It raises a prickly question. If the authentic Meghan we see in interviews and charity galas is merely a polished character in a tightly managed PR script, then who else out there is playing a role? And how many of us are cheering for the persona, not the person? It's not just about Meghan. This case casts a long shadow over celebrity culture as a whole. The curated Instagram feeds, the staged candid moments, the spontaneous red carpet remarks that took 2 publicists and a crisis manager to approve. It's all theater and the audience, United States. The things like real meaningful change, like she's trying to do things, that it's almost like a slap in the face of the people who are really doing the good work and who are really trying to make a difference. And then you have Meghan, this woman perpetrating this fraud of trying to be this goodwill ambassador. And we have to put her in her place then. We have to. Totally. Well, what then got interesting, Diner, is I was able to try and, I was able to get to some of the people who... Meanwhile, the people who do see the raw behind-the-scenes reality, the assistants, makeup artists, stylists, staffers, and insiders, are often muzzled by NDAs and reputational threats. Their truths get buried under the weight of celebrity lawyers and carefully timed puff pieces. When they do dare to speak out, it's in hushed tones and anonymously sourced quotes, just hoping someone will listen and, more importantly, believe them. Or she was with Prince Harry, because, as I say, the British Airways staff member told me this was not a new thing. This behavior was not new after she entered the royal family, and I was able to speak to him again. I will not name him out of respect. But the irony, the more image-obsessed a public figure becomes, the less trust they inspire. After all, how can you tell what's real when everything's been filtered, airbrushed, and rehearsed for mass approval? I have stepped down from royal duties more than 5 years ago, but she keeps taking aim at the monarchy. The Duchess of Sussex has made, reportedly, at least half a dozen swipes at the royal family. Ah, the comparisons. Inevitable, persistent, and, depending on who you ask, completely undeserved. For years, Meghan Markle has been likened to Princess Diana, a woman who redefined what it meant to be royal by embracing vulnerability, empathy, and, most importantly, people. Yes, actual people. First, obviously, when she launched, as ever, her new company, the very first thing she said was, "Look, you know, when I had the TIG, which was her previous lifestyle website, you know, I loved cooking and I loved gardening." Diana didn't just wave at crowds. She got down on their level, hugging AIDS patients when no one else dared, comforting the sick in hospital wards, laughing with janitors, and yes, even chatting it up with the flight crew over chicken or fish. She didn't need a publicist to choreograph compassion. It just flowed naturally. Yes, and that, she basically said, I had to keep my light under a bushel at this time because of the royal family. Then we get her show, her Netflix show, and there's digs throughout that show. She's even Kate Middleton, who walks the fine line between royal protocol and relatability with the grace of a swan in Louboutin heels, has earned her stripes as genuinely kind, respectful, and approachable. Not perfect, but real. You never hear of her demanding first-class upgrades or refusing to acknowledge the staff bringing her tea. The staff? She talks about her creativity being stunted. She says that when, she first, and, as a result of the royal family, she says that when she became a mum, she would have thought that she'd be able to have a baby on her hip and give speeches, but then, the whole drama and the pain and everything that was caused by being part of the royal family, they're all very carefree. And then there's Meghan. According to the slew of anonymous flight attendants, former aides and insiders willing to whisper into the void, Meghan's version of royalty looks more Hollywood than Kensington. Less people's princess, and more don't make eye contact unless you're Harry. Critics claim her warmth is as selective as a VIP guest list, flowing freely when there are cameras rolling, journalists around, or Prince Harry hovering nearby and switching off like a light once the attention fades. She's not just a salt on the royal family, but you only have to follow it to know that she's just getting these little jigs in all the time, which means that she can't quite disengage herself from being royal. Instead of humanizing those around her, she allegedly strategizes kindness, extending courtesy only when it supports the storyline, which, to put it plainly, gives the same energy as someone tipping their Uber driver only if they think it'll show up in a tweet. She has a platform, and yet she has to keep having a go at them. She's smart enough to know that we'll be talking about it if she has a go, so it keeps her in the news cycle, which means Netflix keeps hiring her. And for those who hold royal traditions close to heart, where public service and humility are supposed to be the gold standard, this alleged elitism doesn't just miss the mark, it bulldozes it. The ratings aren't great, which they weren't. The fact that she's constantly being discussed means that, she's a bona fide person to be engaging with. Since cutting royal cords and hopping the pond, Meghan Markle has undergone a transformation that could make even the Kardashians raise an eyebrow. No longer bound by palace dress codes or press offices, she's been reborn in the land of reinvention as a modern-day Mother Teresa with a podcast. The ratings aren't great, which they weren't. The fact that she's constantly being discussed means that, she's a bona fide person to be engaging with. Global humanitarian? Check. Women's rights advocate? Absolutely. Mental health warrior. She's given TED Talks without the TED. Sprinkle in a little Netflix. a pinch of Spotify, and a multi-million-dollar production deal or two. And voila, you've got the American royal brand polished and ready for prime time. Under that, her popularity just keeps dropping, and people that have been following along can see right through this. But yes, I'm sure, seeing as it's only June, there'll be more to come, unfortunately. But let's talk about Princess Anne, because Princess Anne has declined parties and personal fanfare for her 75th birthday, and she's instead hosted more than 100 of her chat. But here's the problem. The backstage stories just won't stop leaking. For every polished keynote speech or charitable venture, there's another hushed account of cold stares, sharp words, and diva behavior from those who encountered Meghan without the makeup, lighting, or media prep. It's enough to make even the most loyal fans pause and ask, is this compassion or a casting call? I'm talking to him at Palace, so she reportedly spent more than 2 hours at this event and personally greeting more than 200 guests and thanking them for their work. Can you tell us a bit more about this? It's interesting we go from Meghan to, can someone really be the face of global empathy? While allegedly side-eyeing flight attendants and ghosting staff with a don't speak unless spoken to vibe, the branding is airtight, no doubt. Meghan's team knows how to frame her as the savior of the modern monarchy-turned-American icon. But if compassion only kicks in when the cameras are rolling, we're not talking about kindness. We're talking about method acting. Not around. So she doesn't want to party, any fanfare, anything like that. She's had these 200 guests all from 100 different charities. She, of course, is the hardest-working royal member of the royal family and has been for years. And it's not just some of these. At best, it's a case of misunderstood motives. At worst, it's an award-worthy performance wrapped in a cashmere coat and delivered with a perfect PR bow. And the audience is starting to notice the cracks in the script. Very senior staff member on a film that Meghan had shot in between the seasons of Suits. Now, this is before she met Prince Harry, and the way that she treated Meghan's alleged image control may just be the tip of the iceberg, but it serves as a flashing neon warning sign in our famed obsessed era. When every moment is curated for optics, the line between reality and illusion blurs. And somewhere in that blur, authenticity dies a quiet, well-lit death, dressed, of course, in designer labels. And it was like nothing else. She was described to me by this very senior staff member, someone who's respected in the industry, as the word. As more behind-the-scenes accounts bubble to the surface, like royal tea left to boil over. One thing is clear. Meghan Markle's reputation isn't just at risk. It's wobbling in designer heels on the edge of a very steep cliff. And no amount of curated podcast episodes, People magazine puff pieces, or handwritten thank you notes are going to stop the public from squinting a little harder. They have ever had to deal with, and again, what was so fascinating, P. Diner, is it came back to transportation. She has such a thing with transportation. She was dumb. To her loyal supporters, she's still the brave Duchess who dared to color outside the royal lines, a modern-day rebel queen who traded tiaras for activism and escaped the so-called firm with her prince in tow. But for a growing number of critics and insiders, that narrative is starting to look less like a fairy tale and more like a PR stunt with an unlimited. So next time Meghan talks about protecting Archie from the spotlight, maybe someone should ask, protecting him from what? Or from whom?